Tennessee at Georgia. A lot to unpack in this game. This is the biggest game of the weekend and high stakes for both teams. Georgia's already sitting there with 2 losses. A third loss will likely keep them out of the playoff and certainly out of the SEC championship game. Tennessee, on the other hand, they're sitting there with 1 loss in the SEC and a win over Bama. And if they get a win over Georgia here, they're almost certain to be locks for both the SEC championship game and a college football playoff. But a loss could derail that. So a lot at stake for this game. Now let's take a look into what we think about the game. Georgia coming off a huge loss to Ole Miss. I think just generally in this season they haven't looked as dominant as we had thought they would be coming into the season and what they have been in previous years. Carson Beck has been a mess. That's really just the best way to put it. He's been a mess this year. Turnovers all over the place, interceptions 3 times a game, 2 times a game. And last game, they put up 10 points offensively. So not a good offensive showing for Georgia. Their line has struggled, and Ole Miss was able to get after them with their great D-line. And you know who else has a great D-line? Tennessee. James Pierce can wreck that game. So that Georgia's going to have a pretty tough time blocking this Tennessee defensive line. Now, Georgia always will have the weapons that can bust open a game. We saw what happened with Texas. Their defense just kind of smothered Texas. Georgia was the beneficiary of some short field in that game, but they were able to smother Texas offensively. And Texas's offense is probably a little bit more explosive than Tennessee. Now, when we look at Tennessee, we have Nico. That is a big question mark. He got hurt in the Mississippi State game. Likely a concussion, they're saying, and Heupel's been pretty close to the chest saying, we'll see. He put out the injury report yesterday saying he's questionable. I've heard reports saying that, he should be in. I've heard reports saying that there's no way. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning that he's not going to play. Coming off a hit like that, I just don't think that he's going to be able to play. But we'll see. And I do think that it will make a difference in this game because while Nico hasn't been lighting the world on fire this year, he does provide that explosive big play capability that Gaston, their backup quarterback, does not. And he can hit those guys deep into stride and throw the ball 60 yards downfield. And we've seen Georgia's secondary be a little bit vulnerable. And if you take that threat away, you really only have to focus on the run game. Now, Tennessee's run game is one of the best in the business. They have Dylan Sampson back there, who's one of the best backs in the SEC, and they have an offensive line to make that successful, which is part of the reason why Tennessee has been, pretty balanced this year on offense because they have a really good run game and they haven't had to rely on Nico here. Now, Tennessee's defense can really get after the Georgia offense. So it's a pretty good matchup on both sides of the ball. I do like Tennessee in this spot. I like him to cover, even if Gaston is in and he's going to be their quarterback. I think Tennessee can at least keep it close. I do think that if Nico is playing, I think Tennessee wins this game outright. And I just think that Georgia's had too many struggles offensively to put up a ton of points. And we haven't seen that their defense be all that great either. And they just came off of a really hard game. So I think Tennessee here can end up pulling up the upset if Nico is in. So I'm going Tennessee plus 10.5 here. It'll be an exciting game and I can't wait for it. Follow Big Body Ball CFB on all socials.